All right, we are live. All right, so welcome everyone. Okay, all right. I'm really excited for today's podcast. So today we have a special guest. We have Quincy, who is the founder of freeCodeCamp. And today we're going to be talking about kind of the future of learning to code. So that's talking about AI, access, and the evolution of all in education. And so we'll hear from Quincy how he started with freeCodeCamp, kind of start from the past and kind of where that journey took and that inspiration came from to the present, where we're going to unpack and see like what's the biggest shift we've seen today with the rise of AI and LLMs. How are students using AI to leverage and learn, but also how is the curriculum also adapting to prepare students for the new transformation that we have? And we'll do a deep dive into all that. And so whether you're a student, you're an educator, or just curious about learning, we have the perfect person here for that. So Quincy, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, let's get started with just talk about your story with freeCodeCamp. Like how did it all start?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was a teacher and a school director. I ran schools in the US and in China, and I didn't have any programming background at all. And I just wanted to make my school more effective and efficient and see if I could automate some of the boring back office stuff that my teachers and my administrators were doing. And so I just learned some basic Python, and it was incredible. Like just Googling stuff, how much I could get done with just very basic programming skills. So I eventually decided, like, hey, I want to actually become a full blown software engineer. And I did like 9 months of self study. I did tons of hackathons. Every weekend, I would go to a different hackathon around California. And gradually, I started to do well and, learn the tools that you needed to build a quick and dirty hackathon project. And I started winning. And I was able to convert those wins into reputation that I could use to get a developer job, even though I was just some 30-year-old dude who didn't have any programming background, didn't have a computer science degree or anything like that. I worked as a dev for a while, and eventually I was like, all right, I feel ready. I'm going to start building educational products to help people learn these skills that I learned in a more efficient way. And I had fresh in my memory all the struggle that I'd gone through, all the blind alleys I went down, all the mistakes I made jumping around, all the motivational challenges. So I was able to use that to essentially figure out kind of like where to start in terms of teaching people. And I did a bunch of projects that didn't go anywhere, but the one that really took off was just the simplicity of freeCodeCamp, teaching people very basic web development from scratch, essentially. And over the past 11 years, it's grown from just being like a core interactive curriculum to being a popular YouTube channel where we publish full length courses. We've got a publication where we've published 13 or 14,000 tutorials and even full length books now. And then, of course, the freeCodeCamp podcast where I interview devs each week. We've got nearly 200 episodes of that. So, yeah, it's really grown over the last 11 years, and it's all about helping people learn for free at their own pace interactively in the browser or in the freeCodeCamp mobile app.
Awesome. And you mentioned something that's really powerful, and really appreciate what you do for the community, which is free. But that's probably helped many people that may not afford like going to like a coding boot camp or just a traditional education. Like, have you seen a lot of like just success with students going through the free code camp and then just making an impact?
Yeah, I mean, tens of thousands of people have gotten developer jobs after earning one of the freeCodeCamp certifications. So it's clear that it works. I would argue that it's like probably the most proven way to do it, other than getting a computer science degree at this point.
Awesome. And what was the first course that you started out free code camp, and when do you think that free code camp really took off? Because it's
Yeah, it's JavaScript. Just teaching JavaScript. I think that that's still to this day probably the most impactful thing you can learn if you just want to learn to build programming and build stuff that actually does stuff in the real world. Build like a software as a service tool or even back office tools that you can use on your at your day job, regardless of whether that's working as an accountant, whether that's just working, as a librarian or any number of different jobs where you are using a computer a lot, you can almost certainly figure out ways to make that experience better and get more done just learning JavaScript and building some quick JavaScript apps.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the current platform that exists with FreeCodeCamp, what are the different pathways that a student can take at FreeCodeCamp now? Like, what are some of the pathways that you've there's the full stack. Is there any other platforms that students take from
So
that?
that's an excellent question. We decided to just have a single linear curriculum that goes from beginning to end. And then that way people don't have to ask, what should I learn? It's just a
Yeah,
question of like, where should I be in this pathway? Like a lot of people will jump in. Oh, I already know some HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I'm going to jump straight to the front end libraries. I'm going to learn D3. I'm going to learn some data visualization, or maybe like, oh, I really need to learn relational databases. I've been working as a front end dev for a while and I want to go farther back. And so they might do that, or even like the Node.js full
yeah,
stack development stuff. So, or if they want to learn a second programming language, I always recommend Python as either the first or the second language. It's the second in FreeCodeCamp just because it is easier to see the results of your work with JavaScript than Python. You're just doing stuff in a terminal. It's not as impactful for beginners. But like you can just jump in wherever you want. But the point is that like you don't have to wonder about what all the prerequisites are, because the prerequisites is
yeah,
everything leading up to that point in the curriculum. You are not going to be like, oh yeah, like go grab this algebra book and read
yeah,
that, and then go take this course over here. Like you don't have to jump around or wonder, okay, what should like, am I doing the right thing? It's
yeah,
it's basically like an inverted pyramid in the sense that like you're learning the most important stuff first, and you're gradually progressing to like more detailsy stuff, if that
yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I too was, doing some self-taught, and I've actually learned a lot from your program when I got started, and went through some of the coding bootcamp journey myself. But I think the biggest issue that I've always had was like, there's so many different pathways you can jump into, right? Data science or data analyst, software engineering, and even that, there's just such an overwhelming, map of different routes you can take. Like, just having a singularity roadmap just simplifies everything. And would you say that's the best approach for anyone getting started?
Yeah,
Like, just
I
do
mean,
something and just get started on that.
half of all developer jobs are web developer jobs.
Yeah,
And then like you can look at DevOps, you can look at game development, you can look at a lot of things as essentially extensions or side quests to just becoming a good programmer, understanding computer science principles, understanding software engineering best practices. And you'll learn those through the core free code camp curriculum. And then we do teach tons of other topics too. We
yeah,
have an extensive extracurricular curriculum, if you want to think about it that way. Like we have thousands of full-length courses on YouTube. We have like those full-length books and stuff that I was talking about on various fields. Like if you want to go into specifically mobile app development,
yeah,
well, a huge part of that is just web development and you're using
yeah,
the
for
mobile
sure.
app UI essentially, but you're still doing all the full stack development on the back end, like with servers and stuff, making your APIs. And then if you want to go into DevOps, well, DevOps also is very similar to web development in that
Yeah,
you are working with servers. And so my humble advice to everybody who wants to specialize is start with web development and get a job and then get paid to specialize on the job. Your employers will be like, oh, can you learn this, can you learn this, and then you can get paid to learn.
yeah,
But web development and just becoming a full stack developer, that is the shortest path in my humble opinion to going pro and actually getting paid.
yeah, absolutely. And speaking of like just breaking into the tech field, I think that's the biggest, wall that a lot of like entry level developers face. Maybe that's because of, the interview process or like navigating that exit, like once they finish a curriculum, like what project stands out, like, and so like with even AI, I mean, this is now segregating into like the transformational shift now we have with AI, but how do you stand out in this market with like everything that's going on?
Uh, I always advocate for people to build like three legs to the stool: their skills, their reputation, and their network. And I think that if you have all three of those, you should be able to get work. It may not be as easy right now to get work as a developer as it was in, say, 2021, but there are jobs out there. And for all the hype of, companies saying, "Oh, we're doing everything with AI and stuff," they're hiring devs.
Yeah.
They are. It's I don't know why, but like if you tell like on your stock price goes up if you act like you figured out the magical code to remove developers from the equation. And a lot of managers look at developers as a cost center, but you can't get a lot done without actual devs to build and
Yeah, for
maintain
sure.
your code.
Absolutely. And yeah, we're still gonna need, human assessment with AI, and that's something that we're gonna continue to see. And
Yeah,
so, uh,
I was just going to say, like, I think people greatly under or overestimate the capability of AI to do more advanced stuff. It's very good at doing boilerplate stuff,
yeah,
and it's very good at working with like smaller code bases. But once you get like a pretty large legacy code base, or once you're doing something truly novel that hasn't been done before, AI is not really going to help you that much. It'll help
yeah,
you like understand documentation and stuff like that, but it's not going to do a good job of writing the code.
yeah,
It's I think a lot of people think it's much more powerful than it actually is because they're like, oh, let's build a hackathon project with AI. And that's great because you don't have to worry as much about security. You don't have to worry as much about maintainability, things like that. But I do think there are limits, and the more skilled you are as a developer, the more quickly you notice those limits.
yeah,
And yeah.
absolutely. And there's still like a lot of assessments that we need to, AI is definitely a tool, but we use that tool to kind of just help us make us more efficient. And so that really brings me to the question of like, when I started about 5 years ago is when I kind of started to code. I relied heavily on just troubleshooting, debugging, a lot of the manual process of like looking through your code, using a debugger, or going through the documentation or Googling. Now we have the luxury of like AI, which I feel like kind of transformed how we've learned. But I would love to learn from your side on, like you've seen this entire wave now, but yeah, just talk about this fundamental shift and with the rise of like LLMs, like how, from your perspective, like how is that changing for the learning process for a lot of these beginners?
Well, I think that it makes learning harder because you have this crutch that you can always reach for now. And so people aren't necessarily building up the fundamental skills like they used to. And you could argue, Google just being able to Google search anything and find a Stack Overflow post and copy paste that into your code base and stuff like that. There have always been crutches um, that actually kind of impede actual learning and give you the illusion of progress. Learning's hard.
Yeah,
It can be very frustrating to kind of like sit there and rack your brain trying to solve like a algorithm challenge. For example, like Project
yeah,
Euler was a project that I used a lot. FreeCodeCamp has our own fork of Project Euler with all the challenges that you can code in a code editor instead of the old way where you just do it on a Python file on
yeah.
your, and then you get the output and you plug it in. And it's like correct, incorrect, and that's the only
That's
feedback you
right.
get. Now we've got like test suites and you can iterate much quicker and stuff like that. But like at the end of the day, your brain has to figure out how to rewire itself to understand nested for loops
Yeah,
or other aspects of conditional logic. I mean, yes, you can say, "Hey, write me a switch statement," Codex or Copilot or whatever tool you're using. But at the end of the day, if you don't understand those fundamentals yourself, you're going to be beholden to the tool, and you're not going to be in a good position to be able to evaluate the output of that tool. And uh, I mean, I would encourage people to not be dependent on tools to the extent that you can avoid it. Now we are dependent on like garbage collection as JavaScript developers and Python
yeah,
developers and stuff like that. We're dependent on C libraries under the hood working like they're
yeah,
supposed to. And if you ever have an issue when you're like coding in one of these high level scripting languages where you have to go into the C code and like, oh, we found a fundamental problem with that. I mean, that can be very scary. And I'm not saying that you have to go all the way down the stack.
yeah,
Some people advocate for you really should learn C. You really should learn, memory management, and you really should learn like what's happening at the hardware level.
yeah,
And I think that given like an infinite amount of time, absolutely you should do that. You should go get a computer science degree. But practical reality is people are in a hurry. And if you go through the entire FreeCodeCamp full stack developer curriculum, I mean, it's thousands of hours of coursework, and I can
Yeah.
understand that people are like, "Oh, that's too much time," but we really did distill it down to what you should learn and what we feel confident, like you won't get like laughed out of a developer interview if you like learned all that stuff, right? But if you're in an interview and the person's like, "Okay, like why don't we, you know, do some sort of very routine programming
Yeah.
task," and you're like, "Oh, well, I usually just rely on a tool."
Yeah.
That's not a good look, right?
Yeah. That's
So
fair.
it's not just the interview, but it's the actual day-to-day work. Like people who understand how the actual code base works,
Yeah.
understand basic math, programming, computer science, data structures, algorithms, understand how networks work. Like they can put together like what's happening a lot faster. They can ask better questions to LLMs. They can ask
Yeah.
better questions to Google, whatever tools they're using. They can go and look up like an authoritative source. They can go read an academic paper if they need to, right? Like
Mm.
that is extremely helpful. And yeah, I would say that the presence of LLMs and especially the sycophantic nature of LLMs and the like way that they will give you this illusion of competence when you actually lack that competence, it is kind of insidious and it's scary. And my
Mm.
humble advice would be if you're learning programming, don't rely heavily on LLMs. It's fine to like use them periodically when you get stuck or when you need something explained to you. But if you are making heavy use, if you're just using them constantly, if you're doing like the tab completion constantly, or if you're, like just writing PRs or writing issues for agents to go do, and then you're just evaluating that code, looks good.
Yeah.
I think that's going to really hamper your development as a dev. And uh, you're eventually going to have to learn how to do things right. You
Yeah.
can put it off and you can kind of fake it, but eventually you got to make it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like, we have tools now like Cursor and things like that that are like embedded into like your, IDEs now in VS Code where it will, draft up your code for you to where you can do, you heard the trends of like vibe coding and things like that. So how should, especially for a beginner, when you have essentially one tap away from like asking, ChatGPT to help, you can build an entire project. How like like walk us through like how should they be using that to so that way they can still leverage AI, but still like optimize the most out of learning like the traditional way, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about a classroom, traditionally, you have a good professor who actually cares about your progress and making sure that you understand you're not going to have your laptop out during the lecture. You're going to be taking notes. And then after the lecture, you're going to have that big sheet of notes, and then you can go to the LLM and you can like have a conversation with it about those notes. Like I would use it at the end of a coding session to potentially kind of like recapitulate and dive deeper into things you encountered. And that's how I use LLMs personally. Like I'll have a bunch of questions throughout the day and I'll just write them down. I just dictate them to Siri, like look up XYZ, look up XYZ. And LLMs are just one of the things I do. I usually will read like the full Wikipedia article on
Mm.
something that I need to know too. And potentially also find the subreddit or XYZ and go sort top all time and like just go deep into like understanding those things. There are lots of different information resources out there, and LMs are just drawing from those information
Yeah.
resources, right? It's not like they're creating novel information. What they're doing is they're synthesizing part of their training data. And in the process, they might create some unique connections that nobody has made, depending on how you prompt them. But at the end of the day, like you can do the same thing, and it's nice to have an LLM kind of check your work, so to speak, to get a second opinion. That is kind of how I treat them. I wouldn't say like the first thing you do when you get an error statement, oh, go plug that error into an LLM and see what it says.
Yeah.
See if you can fix it. See if you can
Yeah.
figure it out by reading that error statement, maybe even looking at the documentation. I know it sounds
Yeah.
like a caveman thing to do, but go look at the documentation,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
go
That's
look
fair.
on Stack Overflow. I mean, Stack Overflow is a bunch of talented devs
Yeah.
who are making time to answer these questions. Don't just go straight to the LLM because I feel like that's um, one analogy I have for LLMs. And again, I hope I'm not bashing them too much, but uh, and I do specifically say LLMs because we've had AI for decades, right? Like
Yeah.
AI, like you could argue like Google Translate is ground zero for LLMs, right? A lot of the innovations in Google Translate and a lot of the massive improvements in its efficacy. Like a lot of that is AI, but recently it's just hype to say AI, everything's AI, right? But like it was just software. It was just using a different approach previously. In some
Yeah.
cases, it literally was using like tensors and stuff. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I don't want to go too off the rails here. I would say that you should absolutely be able to just use it as a reference and not use it as something that you're constantly talking to throughout the day, because I think that's how people get overconfidence, and overconfidence will absolutely, it's not the uh you know the danger is not ignorance, it's the illusion of not being ignorant that stops
Yeah.
you from learning.
Yeah, even that's a good point because, like, um, if you don't use AI as much or depend on it, you mentioned something great, which is like Stack Overflow, Reddit. I'm sure even Reddit nowadays has like a lot of good responses. They might not give you the exact answer you're looking for, but that might be a good thing, right? Because like it helps you maybe figure out a form of the. I've always found Stack Overflow to be where it might be like 80% of the answer that you're looking for, but 20% of the time you have to like come with your thinking of like, okay, like that's a way to solve it, but like what could I do to like maybe that's when like you use your thinking brain and like pair that with the doc and you're like, okay, like this is how you solve it kind of thing, right?
Yeah. And that's the problem solving. I mean, at the end of the day, what is engineering? It's problem solving. It's taking tools off of a rack and
Yeah,
applying those tools, right? Not
yeah,
necessarily creating novel tools. That's what scientists do. But applying.
yeah. And and I mean, and speaking of that too, is how are the students right now? So at Free Code Camp, a lot of the courses are independent, self-paced. Um, how are students, getting like when they're asking for help? Is there like a Discord channel they kind of tap into, or like how do they build a support system?
Yeah. We have
Um,
a forum that
okay,
you can ask any question. And we have lots of questions asked every day there, and people will reply. We also have a Discord where you can get more immediate help. But I like the slower nature of support forums. I mean, that
yeah,
may seem really old school, but you have to think a lot more when you're not just having like this back and forth dialogue, when you're actually like composing, okay, here's the problem. It forces you to think clearer, right?
yeah,
Just like if you think about like how smart people hundreds of years ago would do correspondence through letters, and they had to really think about what they were going to put into that letter because it might be a week or two before they got a reply. And it just forces kind of an intellectual rigor and clarity of thinking. So I like the forums, but a lot of people use Discord as well, and that is a much faster answer because you can just get an answer to your kind of, like, people will ask follow up questions to kind of
yeah,
help shape your thinking to, oh, okay, now I understand after this iterative process what exactly your problem
yeah,
is, and here's what you might look into to solve it. And of course we all use like the Socratic method. We're not trying to answer your question, we're trying to
yeah,
help you find the answer yourself. And
yeah,
so all the free code camp forum moderators and Discord moderators and stuff approach it like that. We're not just trying to give you a quick answer and get you out, we're trying to get you thinking, because the entire
yeah,
goal is to not get past that particular coding challenge. That coding challenge is there to get you to
yeah.
think and get you to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way that, curriculum should be taught is like you could just go straight to an LM, but take the time to just like think through the process and like use the cookie trails, maybe that's through the forum or through the Discord. And yeah, like how does that all intricacies work together? And I agree, like you got to get your hands dirty, like to really understand the why, right? Instead of the hows. And so
Yeah,
I think
and
that's mhm,
to be fair to LLMs, you can absolutely use LLMs that way if you prompt them. If you're like, "Hey, I'm a student and you're the teacher, use the Socratic method to help me arrive at my own answer. Don't just straight up tell me the answer to this. Here's my coding exercise. Where should I start looking in terms of things I could read to understand why my code is not working?"
yeah,
Like you could absolutely do that sort of stuff, but my fear is that people just get hooked. It's kind of like if you were to go to the gym and you never worked out before, you're like, 18 years old, and you're like, maybe I should learn how to get into shape. And somebody's like, oh, here, take these steroids. They'll help you like make way faster progress. and you're like, great, and you're like making insane progress. And then
Right.
one day somebody's like, oh, hey, steroids are really bad for you. You can't do steroids anymore. They're gonna like shorten your life and cause all this sort of damage to your heart and cause all these issues as you age. And you're like, oh, damn, you're right. I shouldn't do steroids anymore. Well, now you're working out without steroids, and you're not making the kind of gains and the progress you were making. Maybe you're actually backsliding because the steroids were this huge crutch. And I'm worried that LLMs are going to be like that. There's already a lot of evidence coming out, like the MIT study, where LLMs essentially make people like less smart at the end of the day. Like
Mm.
that's basically
Yeah.
what's happening. They're progressing way slower than the control groups that don't use LLMs, right? They just use Google search or just
Yeah.
use, I don't know if anybody still does this, but like just literally look things up in a library using
Yeah.
the library search engine and stuff. So I do worry that that's a coming disaster. That like people are just going to lose a whole lot of independent thought and ability to think for themselves and get things done for themselves, and lose the confidence when you take away these tools. And we're going to become like schools and students and workplaces are going to largely become dependent on these LLM subscriptions, which won't be a big deal if they're commoditized. And we saw DeepSeek come
Mm.
out of nowhere and really perform incredibly well, considering you could self-host it. And
Mm.
it was open source or open weight. It's not open source. But that won't be that big of an issue if they're abundantly available and they don't use that much electricity or that much expensive inference equipment and stuff like that. But still, it'll be sad if humans are completely dependent on this tool, because I can tell you, like, physicists are not spending all day looking at a calculator, right? Like they can do a lot of that math themselves when they're on the whiteboard and stuff. And I would hate to see that become the norm, that everybody's dependent on tools in whatever field they're in.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, how do we adapt from here? I think is like the next big question. And speaking of adaptability, has your curriculum been also, adapting to the changes, like maybe integrating some of the AI stuff that maybe students are interested in wanting to play with, or
Yeah, we
has
teach
it?
it as an extracurricular resource. If you go on YouTube and you
Okay.
start typing like retrieval augmented generation or prompt engineering, or different tools that people use like Nation N8N, or
Yeah.
like different like of course we've got some MongoDB AI tool focused courses and stuff like that. Those are great, and those are supplemental. I think that those are things that you learn after you've spent some time learning the fundamentals.
And how
Uh,
long would you? Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, for a lot of these, beginners that are wanting to get started too, how long they can expect to, like, fully feel like, "Okay, um, like like, this is the amount of time I can commit to, like, to feel like I've established the fundamental." What does that timeline look like for
Yeah,
a lot of
I mean,
people?
it's going to depend for everybody. Like some people have more, I guess, like if you study philosophy in university or you studied mathematics or something, you've got a huge edge on
Yeah,
somebody who's just coming at this from like more general, like liberal arts background or a business background or something like that. Like if you did a lot of statistics and stuff like that, you're going to move a lot faster. I think that part of your brain is just going to be kind of pre-wired to an extent to be able to appreciate and quickly grok programming concepts, computer science concepts. And also if you're just like sleeping well, if you're eating well, if you're not using any like psychoactive substances or like that you don't have to use, that those are all things that are going to improve your rate of progress. So everybody is different from those respects. But let's say somebody is in optimal conditions. They're sleeping like 8 hours a night. They're healthy. They don't have any major things stopping them from sitting down and learning for an hour a day. I would say if you learn an hour a day, like 7 days a week, I would try to do 7 days a week, just to keep the forward momentum and not take times off, because every day you take off is kind of you're backsliding slightly. Um, just if you keep up with that, probably within a year or two, you're going to be pretty good. Even though if you add all that up, that's only maybe 1,000 hours of study. Like you can get really good if
yeah,
you're just consistent. And I would say that's probably true for everything. Like I spend a lot of time doing language learning, and I just do it every single day without fail, and I see incredible gains over time.
yeah,
Like it's remarkable. And similarly with like music and stuff like that, it's all about just sitting down and dedicating time and getting it into your routine. But to answer your question, yeah, I would say probably within 9 months, 12 months,
okay.
of dedicated study, you're going to start
Yep.
to feel not only confident in your ability. I mean, you can feel that really quickly if you just go use an LLM to get things done. You'll get that illusion of confidence, but you'll actually feel confidence that can be backed up by empirical evaluation, like getting leak code problems solved
Yeah.
without assistance and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And during that journey, um, you know, there like these students will always going to face a lot of these highs and lows in that development journey. Like when you solve a bug, you're going to feel like really good. And then maybe like when you're stuck on a bug for like 2 weeks, you might feel like you want to like stop and like question yourself. What is something that you would give advice to students to like keep going, even
Yeah.
if it feels like there's going to be a wall in front of them? Like, because I feel like that's a big thing a lot of students face, right?
Yeah. There's like this kind of like doldrums type effect. Like, if you're familiar with that word, like when you used to sail and during the seafaring age, people would
Yep.
be on their boats and they'd have their sails up, and a doldrum was when there was just no wind and it didn't feel like you were moving anywhere, but maybe you were subtly moving. The ocean was subtly moving you, and it was just less perceptible. I will say that it's very common for people to feel like they've plateaued, but in practice, they're actually, it's just the milestones are not always the same distance apart, and it can feel like, um, you're not getting anywhere, that you're spinning your wheels. But every day that you're spending, like continuing to progress, yeah, progress is lumpy, is what I would say. And don't give up, even if it feels like you're not making forward progress. Don't do something dramatic to shake things up. Uh, yeah, just keep at it. And I can tell you, if you type in like 100 days of code on Reddit or on Twitter, um, you'll see like tons of people that are, day 70. And I saw one guy the other day is like day 350. He just
Yeah.
kept going through 100 days of code. And that sort of commitment to consistency is absolutely, like, it's going to carry you. Once you have that momentum, once you've got that streak going and stuff, uh, you're going to make incredible progress, whether you realize it or not. You are progressing.
Absolutely.
That's how the
Absolutely.
human
And
mind works. Is not all progress is visible on the surface. A lot of it is underneath. A lot of it is just solidifying the fundamentals that are already there
yep.
through practice, even if it doesn't feel like you learned some dramatic, mind-blowing new concept that day.
Yeah. There's a quote that says something about I don't know who said it, but they say practice in silence, but success is shown. Like it's like athletes as an example, like they're great at what they do, but you don't know what goes behind the scene. Like they're probably doing like 10,000 basketball shots to get these 3 pointers, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that was like a one slam dunk. I don't know if you ever saw that anime. My kids love it. They love playing basketball. And
yeah.
the main character, Sakuragi, uh, he has to he really like the whole plot of Slam Dunk. It's a great anime. If you have kids, it's great. Like, if you want to get them interested in basketball, because it's all about this guy who's like a ruffian, kind of like gangster, and it's Japan. It's not like gangsters in the
Yep.
states with guns and stuff. They get into fights and stuff, and he was just kind of a ruffian, like, and he figures out that he has a talent for basketball, and he
Hmm.
just keeps pursuing it. And within a pretty short period of time, through everybody's tutelage and through his own consistent hard work, he makes incredible gains. And one of the things that the coach has him do toward the end to prepare for like the big championship bracket, the national championship in Japan, is to shoot like 10,000 shots. He has to shoot 10,000 shots. And that's how he gets really good at shooting around, the goal. Sorry, pardon my lack of knowledge of like basketball terminology, but like he shot lots of, like, not just free throws, but all around. And it was just that sheer volume
Yep.
that really gave him the skills to be able to perform under pressure later when he was actually, shooting with the defender and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's the repetition and consistency. And I think one thing that helped me a lot when I was going through my developer journey too is um, just doing build and burns. I don't know if you've heard of that terminology, but you build a project and then you just burn it down and
Yeah.
then you build it again. I thought it helped. It's just like a muscle training, I think, of like um, it's like when you're, using navigation to get to a point A to point B, maybe use it the first 5 times and then like after that, you don't need it. And so it's kind of like that repetition that helps a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of
And
great analogies. Yeah.
I think that rewriting, rebuilding, like it's always better the second time. Like if
Yeah.
I ever have like data loss or something, like I'm working on some draft for an article or draft of like a code base or something catastrophically happens and I lose it, I was kind of reassuring myself it's going to be so much better when I do it the second time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks for kind of sharing your insights on that. And so to kind of now segue to the last portion, which is like what's next, like the future and the future of freeCodeCamp. I want to first talk about, the future developer profile. So like, 5, 10 years out, I'm sure, skill sets will change, but what do you think will define a successful developer like 5, 10 years out with like our like ongoing change and, you know, especially in this environment?
Yeah, I mean, communication skills will continue to be really important. Clear thinking. So, I think being able to think clearly and then communicate clearly, whether that's with team members, whether that's with agents that are going out and essentially like building out the features. Let's say that the tools continue to progress. We don't know whether they're going to plateau. We don't know whether LLMs are really going to be the model that gets us to like insanely great tool assistance as a dev. The vision, I think, is for all devs to ultimately become technical product managers and to essentially be able to dictate what gets done and then to be able to drop in and do like the coding where necessary. But it's kind of like a pilot, pilot like maybe takes off and lands and just monitors the autopilot system and all the different instrumentation, all the tools, and they have all the warning lights and everything. So I think ultimately developers will become more like pilots in the sense that they have incredible tool assistance, but they're still involved. Their hands are still on the proverbial stick. So that's the dream. And how soon we'll actually arrive at that and how much of a productivity boost that will actually be remains to be seen. But I do think that just being good at thinking is going to be key and being good at learning because there's so much to learn and it's only going to grow. So I would, when I said communication, I think that being able to communicate with your team members, being able to communicate clearly, LLMs are very good at answering if you do a good job of setting up the question, right? A lot
Yeah.
of times, like there could be an incredible improvement if you use the context window properly, if you are able to prompt engineer, if you're able to manage the context. I think there's like an entire new field, like a buzzword that I've been hearing, which I believe was like context management or something like that.
Mhm.
But basically, LLMs start to break down, even the ones that in theory have like giant, context window capabilities and stuff. I think Claude Code has definitely marketed itself as being able to handle a lot of tokens in the context. Like you could, in theory, put your entire legacy code base in there, and it'd be able to use that. But you get context rot, and the longer a discussion goes on, or the longer an agent runs, the more likely it's going to go off the rails and stuff like that. Being able to empathize, not only, I mean, if you think about communication, programming is communication, right?
Mhm.
With a human, you're like you and I are talking, we're sharing information through natural language. It's structured in a way that you're asking questions, I'm answering, you have context into who I am, my background, I have some degree of context into you, Tony, and I can, and also to the audience likely listening to this, because it's probably fairly similar to the audience listening to the freeCodeCamp podcast, which I do each week, although maybe a little bit more senior for the MongoDB podcast. But like all that stuff is there. And what I'm doing is I'm just trying to communicate what's in my head, get that into your head. And with computers, you're essentially trying to get this vision you have in your head into the computer's head so that it
Yeah.
can actually execute that, repeatedly 24/7 as it runs its, core loops and stuff like that. So, and code is just extremely precise communication at the end of the day, especially when you go like low level. If you
Yeah.
look at like assembly language is literally telling like putting one foot in front of the other for the
Yeah.
computer. And now we have this big stack of abstraction, all these tools and stuff, but ultimately we're still communicating. So that may seem like kind of a punt, like, oh yeah, communication, that's so general. But I do believe that if you can build up your capacity for thinking and holding lots of ideas in your head and, envisioning what needs to be done and understanding problems and bringing with you a multidisciplinary, broad domain of background context and knowledge in your own head, that's going to translate into being like a really effective developer, whether you're communicating with other devs on your team or whether you're communicating with models.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit the nail on that. Like, software engineering might be just writing code, but that itself is communication. But soft skills is it's still super important for engineers. Like, just that's kind of the the conclusion is that because you still have to communicate with stakeholders, like with product managers, and also just like the larger the organization gets, like the project understanding could be misunderstood. So just communicating that effectively, that takes a skill set. And so like I agree. I think soft skills. I think that's one of the things where like that will be always going to be there, and the better, then you're more prepared. Like I think for the future there.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate your outlook on that. And so the next thing I want to do is talk about freeCodeCamp's role in the AI world. So, like, what are you working on in terms of maybe like coursework projects and anything that is exciting you right now with, you know, uh, that's what's going on in FreeCodeCamp.
Yeah, well, I'm hyped that our full stack development certification version 10 of our curriculum, we've gone through 10 different iterations, just gradually expanding and improving the interactability, the accessibility, like all these different considerations, the pacing. One of the things we do is we frequently remove stuff that we don't think is necessary anymore. So, like, we de emphasize like bash scripting, for example, because that's one of the things that LLMs are very good at is writing bash script. So we don't necessarily have to go as deep in teaching bash. Similarly, a lot of HTML, CSS, there's like emerging best practices. We don't need to teach the
Mm,
entire, documentation, for that entire, like every single different method or something like that. We can just teach a few specific things that are widely used that are worth understanding with the eye to developers being able to look things up just in time if they need to go beyond those fundamentals. So we're going through and just continuously refining the code base and
mm,
the curriculum to be able to be just a more effective way of learning. At the end of the day, we just want to dramatically improve the returns to time invested. Obviously, the price performance of FreeCodeCamp is infinity because it's literally
yeah,
free. You don't
yeah,
even need to create an account. You can go in there and you can do everything if you want
yeah.
to. You have to have an account to claim the certifications, but uh, yeah, like we just want to make sure everybody has a really fast, data light, like extremely streamlined experience. Like the vision is the Matrix where I need to learn how to fly this helicopter and it gets uploaded and your eyes just blink a few times and you're good. Like that doesn't work like that yet, but we want you to be able to have kind of a similarly smooth path to learning software engineering fundamentals and web development fundamentals. So that's what we're gradually working on. So that's the big thing that FreeCodeCamp does. Like almost the entire staff is dedicated to, and the staff is software engineers and who often have a teaching background. A lot of them are non-traditional learners. A lot of them don't even have a degree, and they came in and they're just making improvements to the core code base and the curriculum. And then, of course, in terms of teaching AI, we continue to publish lots of video courses. We've worked with like Google's Gemini team to create courses around that. So we get grants from a lot of different organizations, including MongoDB, to teach best practices and teach emerging technologies and emerging approaches to solving problems. So we'll continue to do all that as well. But the core curriculum will probably remain focused on fundamental skills because if you talk with like Sean Wang, Swix, um,
Mhm.
he'll tell you, and he kind of like coined the AI engineer thing, or at least popularized it. He had his big AI engineering conference in San Francisco. Very influential guy. And if you talk to him, he'll tell you like AI engineering is 90% web development, 10% knowing the specific APIs and what they can do as far as pulling in powerful LLMs. So if that's the case, then our curriculum in theory should never be more than 10% focused on AI
Mm,
tools. And I would argue that probably closer to 95, 98% of it should be focused on core programming, and AI should just be kind of an additional module, which is the case. We've got this book, you can Google it, AI assisted coding. It's a full length handbook that we published a couple of weeks ago. Murgesh Mohapatra on our team, he learned how to use all the different tools. He breaks them all down And then we used that book as the basis of doing our own team hackathon, where we split up into pairs, and everybody on the team went and built some stuff with
Mhm.
these. Essentially, the goal being that you're not writing the code, you're just using agents to write the code. And it's kind of like a hands-off exercise. Obviously, that's not like practical in real life. You would want to be able to write the code yourself, stuff. But how far can we get with just agents writing the code and us just prompting them and giving them context? So we'll continue to do those kinds of things too. I don't want you to think that we've got our head in the sand and like we're about to become dinosaurs and stuff, because I genuinely don't believe that. I spent a
Yeah.
great deal of time talking with software engineers who are both building these tools and who are using them, and who have used them in the past and have decided, well, this tool is not ready for prime time yet, or I didn't like how this tool was essentially like it can explode the amount of time. People can spend way more time trying to get things done through the tool than if they just took the steering wheel themselves, right? In many situations. So that's a long answer, but in short, the core curriculum is everything, and AI tools, we're going to be teaching those as extracurricular for the most part.
That's awesome. I'm really excited to see like the up and coming work with freeCodeCamp, and I just want to say thank you for like even including me. Like I've started with freeCodeCamp, and it's transformed my life. Like being in a whole new direction. I worked in the oil and gas before, and tech has been very very transformative, especially for me, and I want to make the impact too. And so just want to say thank you for that. And before we wrap up, I have one last question to like ask you is like, to the message to learners, to the millions of students that you impact, like what is one golden advice that you can give to the developers that are wanting to learn through your curriculum or are going through your curriculum? Like what's one golden piece of advice that you can give to them that will, carry to them for the rest of their journey?
Yeah, I mean, just get your routine right is what I would say. It's not like, oh, I'm a developer now, I don't need to learn anymore. No, developers are basically paid to think and paid
Yeah.
to learn. The code is just a byproduct of their learning and their thinking. So if you can get into a place where you're sleeping right, or you're eating right, where you're exercising, where you're right with your family and your friends and all those things, and you don't have like a tremendous amount of noise in your life, if you're able to get to that stable position, you're going to learn way faster if you can lock those things in. So trying to get like learning as a routine, as a reflex, almost like, oh, it's, 9 o'clock. I'm going to start getting ready for bed, and I'm going to go ahead and start doing my late night readings. Or, oh, it's 6 a.m. I'm going to wake up, I'm going to drink some
Yeah.
coffee, and I'm going to get some coding done before work. Like if you can figure out a way to like work this learning in to your busy schedule. A lot of people have kids. A lot of people have aging parents. A lot of people have just things that are stopping them from necessarily being able to easily carve out time. And just try to figure out plans for resolving those so you can get a routine. Because if you really think about anybody who has made substantial progress toward a long-term substantial goal, like whether that's athletics, whether that is scientists that are working very long time on like some sort of big problem, it's almost always a marathon. It's almost
Yeah.
always maybe multi-year, maybe multi-decade endeavor, and that is simply not possible if you have a lot of chaos in your life. So to the extent that you can control those things and really lock in, I would encourage you to try to do that. And the other advice I'll give is don't quit your day job if you're learning coding. Don't say like, oh, I'm going to give myself 6 months and I'll get a developer job. There's too many things beyond your control. Try to just work it into your routine. There are diminishing returns to trying to learn for like 8 hours one day and then not have time to learn for the rest of the week. Like it's much better to really just learn for like 30 minutes to an hour every day, and to
Yeah.
say, okay, that's enough. I don't need to get compulsive about this. I don't need to go overboard. I've done enough. I'm going to go relax.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to do it for like 8 hours a day. Like work, showing up every day is more important than like maybe kind of like inconsistent days, right? So like it's a slow, and it's like Rome wasn't built in a day too. So like it's a slow and progressive journey that will build up, that will have compounding effects for the future. So I once again, Quincy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story of freeCodeCamp and kind of walking us through the evolution of education, and really excited to see like more courses content come out, and definitely check out freeCodeCamp for more of the if you're just starting out as a developer or like continuing to learn some cool stuff, they got a lot of cool courses there. But appreciate you having you on, Quincy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for the opportunity, Tony.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Take care, guys. All right. See ya. Bye.